There's an old newspaper tradition or saying that a columnist is only good for 7 years. At his peak for 7 years. Anything before that is premature. Anything after that is old hat. All right, I read a thing today that who was the last? Burley Grimes was the last spitball pitcher.
Middle 30s, yeah.
And said he tried to hit Paul Wainer in the stomach with a spitball, and he put it in the upper deck.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
that's right. That's right. You don't know where it's from there.
Oh, is it Jerry?
Now, we have a 22 rifle that goes off. Whenever you have too many drills.
When you tell an outlandish story.
Yeah. It goes off a lot when I'm shooting there. I was working for the Fort Worth Press, governed police, as a matter of fact, and this is about 47 or 48, and there was a city editor there that I didn't get along too well with, and so I made the humble proposition that I'd be transferred to sports, or I'd transfer myself to another city, or another job, or digging ditches, or... So I did move to sports. I was in Fort Worth for, I suppose, about 10 years on the press before I came here to the Times-Herald. This is Thursday morning. The Dallas Cowboy quarterback carousel is busted. Let's start it over. Thursday morning. The Dallas Cowboy quarterback carousel is still in operation. Around and round she goes, and where she stops, nobody will say officially. Tom Landry, the coach, said there's still a war on for the Cowboy quarterback job. He said this week that both Roger Staubach and Craig Martin have performed equally well in exhibition games to date, and that they have, as you can tell by the bookkeeping for the first 3 games. Staubach has completed 64% of his passes, and 64% is a remarkable percentage. Anything over 50% completion is good. Craig Martin hasn't played as much as Staubach, but he's completed almost 70% of his passes. Some of us smart alecks think that Landry already has his mind set on Staubach as his #1 quarterback this season, but then what do we know? Oh, you like Miami?
I like both of them. That's it. I like both clubs, and I hate when they play one another.
Who's your favorite player on Miami?
No.
Mercury Morris. Isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, I couldn't judge the quality of writing in Dallas. I would be the last person to try to judge anybody's writing. Everybody has his own style or is searching for his own style, and not everyone has found it. And I always try to preach that you're in competition mostly with yourself. You do the best that you can do. You're not working against the other guy. You let the competition take care of itself. You don't have really time to worry about what somebody else is going to do. I read, or try to read, most of 7 newspapers a day, 2 news magazines a week, a couple of sports magazines a month. That means that there are a whole lot of fine novels and a lot of good books that have nothing to do with sports that I don't get around to. And I miss that because I love to read. I think reading is a tremendous part of your education. One of the things you try to tell young sports writers, read everything you can get your hands on. The sports reader is not an idiot with his eyes 1/8 of an inch apart in a number 19 neck. He may know a little something about Shakespeare. He may know a little something about the Bible. He may know something about poetry. Read everything so you can incorporate all angles and all different fields in your writing. It's a field that's lends itself to a little bit more imagination and writing freedom. You're not bound by the old traditional who, what, when, where, and all that reporting thing. You get tired of it. It's like you get tired of driving a nail in the wall, I suppose, but it's not as much drudgery as the ordinary job, of course, because there's always something new happening. There's always something unexpected. You have no routine, and I think that's the reason that Most people stay in this particular business, certainly not for the money. You know, the old saying, the newspapers, they pay you off under a 10-watt bulb so the ones will look like 20s. Somebody said that sports writing is just like, it's habit forming and it's cheaper than dope, and I suppose that's the reason most of us stay in it. And it gives you a certain amount of freedom. You're more alive. You're more caught up in action and movement. If you're in the columnist business, you're inclined to be sarcastic and do some satire occasionally, but you have to remember the first person that you make fun of is yourself. You can't do it effectively on other topics if you take yourself seriously, or your subject real seriously. I would hate to write on serious topics all the time because I think it would affect the writer himself. And if you're writing something that's not too serious, well, hell, you don't stay serious. You have a laugh occasionally. The die-hard sports fan, I really feel sorry for her. The person who thinks that the earth is going to turn over tomorrow because University of Texas loses to Penn State, or that Tom Landry should be burned at the stake because somebody fumbled in the Super Bowl on the 1-yard line. I actually feel sorry for people who put that much stress on the sports result or on the performances of a certain person. There are lots of things more important than sports. I think sports is tremendously important in that it takes your mind off temporarily from these other things that are more important. But the sports fan who is so wrapped up in a certain team or in a certain person, so much that it affects his nervous system and his digestion and the way he shouts at his children, I feel sorry for that person. In a quarter century or so of this business, a guy sees a bit of it all. He grows callous to shock, impervious to surprise, immune to goosebumps or disappointment. He's also inclined to cough a lot when he gets up in the morning, and he notices a nagging twinge in the region of his fourth lumbar at almost all times. Everybody's going to write a novel. I've started 10 of them. I don't think I'll ever write it. I don't know. I just simply don't have that drive, novel drive. Now, I might have it next week, but I don't have it now. I have certainly a lot of respect for people who turn out novel after novel, but I have more respect, actually, for a newspaper guy who every day, does the best he can and knows that that product is going to be used to line a bird cage the next day, or at the very most, line a shelf in the pantry. People do that. I love them. I think that the best people I know in the writing business are in the newspaper business. Lo, it was written here on this very wall just recently in fiery letters that attracted attention as far away as the next desk, that the present pro football premium is on running backs. Quietly and not unkindly, this old sage here placed a fatherly hand on shoulders of inquiring coaches in his congregation and saith, Go thou and gather unto thyself many fullbacks and halfbacks, because the way you folks is using same, you is verily going to need a mess of them.